Okay, good. Oops, we want it's going. Okay, I think we should be live now.
Live.
Do. See if it's live. Oh, yep, there we go. Okay, good. Yep, there we go. Heard the sound of my voice, so we should be chilling there. Make sure we're logged in everywhere that we need to be. All right. Looks like. Just make sure we're live on the other channels.
Whoa, dude, I didn't see PNB rock that. Oh, shit.
Bro, he got shot at the Waffle House in LA.
Yeah. Yikes, man.
It's crazy.
Big freaking yikes on that.
Okay. Cool. Everyone just saw me drink out of a water bottle. Like I'm a child. Tar Heel Nation, we'll talk about that in just a second. Let's see here. Just
what's Tar Heel Nation on about?
Talking about the owner for the Suns, Savers, or whatever his name is.
Okay, yeah, we'll discuss.
We'll definitely discuss. Yeah. Okay. All right, I think we have enough people in here to start. So, how is everybody doing? This is, of course, your boy Bernie here on The Charge, giving the latest NBA news and rumors, and also basketball opinions, along with who else other than Pete?
What's up, bro? What's up, people? Welcome into The Charge. Bernie, thanks for having me as always.
Yep. No big problem. And of course, guys, we have a lot of news to talk about. I think that this is going to be a very interesting discussion as we get into talking about the Suns owner officially getting reprimanded for what he did. We'll talk about the fine and everything that's been going on, as you can clearly see in my background. We'll also talk about the in-season tournament as well. I think that's an interesting point of discussion to talk about. Do we agree with it? Do we not agree with it? Another thing I also wanted to talk about was the Seattle Kraken's owner or CEO talking about the storm, or sorry, not the storm, but the Supersonics potentially coming back. So that's another discussion point as well. And then, of course, we have Pete's topic of the day, and that is, of course, sponsored by Pete. But we are going to be doing some trade machine stuff. So we're going to talk about trades, some realistic trades that I think teams could make in order to get them, or in order for us to think how they can get themselves in better positions. But without further ado, Pete, do you have anything to say before we get started on this all?
I'm ready for it. I'm ready to get in there and start talking. I can't wait, dude. What are we, only 4 weeks away now from opening day?
We're 4 weeks away from opening day. Of course, it starts in October. I'm excited for it. I think we're all excited for it. So, without further ado, let's get right into the first story. And of course, everybody, the first story has to be, of course, about the Phoenix Suns owner, and that is, of course, Robert Sarver, suspended 1 year and fined $10 million. So, before we get started, let me read the story really quick. Sarver has been suspended for 1 year from the Phoenix Suns and fined $10 million following an investigation into a toxic workplace issue under his ownership. Sarver must, during his suspension, complete a training in a program focused on respect and appropriate conduct in the workplace. The report of the independent investigation was based on the information gathered from interviews with 320 individuals, including current and former employees. So among the findings, this is what they found out. So we don't, so you guys can kind of get the TDLR of everything. So Sarver, on at least 5 occasions during his tenure with the Suns Mercury organization, repeatedly used the N-word when recounting statements of others. Sarver engaged in instances of inequitable conduct towards female employees, made many sex-related comments in the workplace, made inappropriate comments about the physical appearance of female employees and other women, and on several occasions engaged in inappropriate physical conduct towards male employees. Server engaged in deeming and harsh treatment of employees, including by yelling and cursing at them. The statement and conduct described in the findings of the independent investigation are troubling and disappointing, said NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. We believe the outcome is a right one, taking into all account the fate, circumstances, and context brought to the light by a comprehensive investigation of this 18-year period, and our commitment to uphold proper standards in the NBA workplace. Again, the rest of it is just what Adam Silver and Sarver kind of said. So, Pete, it's a little bit of a heavy topic to talk about, but it must be kind of reported on just because of the nature of this whole situation. Did you think at the end of the day that this suspension and fine and punishment, really, do you think the punishment fit the crime? Or maybe not the crime is the right word, but do you think it is appropriate what he got?
So here I'm going to give a two-part answer. I think it's not enough, one, right? But and then here is my kind of answer to Tar Heel Nation's question. A lot of the other people asking, in response to this, and how did this guy not get treated the way Ronald or what was his name? Robert Sterling?
Donald Sterling.
Donald. You're right. Donald
Donald.
Sterling. How did he not get the Donald Sterling treatment and just be removed? It's very, very tough for me to believe that the NBA didn't punish him to the fullest extent possible based on what they had evidence-wise. It behooves nobody in the NBA to keep this guy around. And this has been coming for years and years. I mean, I have heard, awful numerous things about Robert Sarver literally for probably the last decade at this point, just talking about how awful this guy is. And it's tough in the sense that you would hope that that's enough, right? But when it comes down to it, unless there's, direct video, whatever the evidence is, and I don't know if they've released any of that evidence to the public. I don't think they have. I think just with this announcement coming out, maybe things will start to come out, but it's not enough. It's not enough because realistically, all of the NBA would be better if this guy wasn't there. Not only
Yeah.
just in terms purely for the human element of it, right? Just he's a bad dude, by all accounts. Everything we know about him, and obviously this article, what it's reporting, this dude is the worst, right? But beyond even just that, him not being an owner in the NBA is a good thing for everybody. He's famous for not spending money on contracts. He's famous for, being a bad dude in general. So it's tough for me to believe the NBA didn't do as much as they could. So I can't really fault them because I think they would have if they could have. But it doesn't feel like enough. It doesn't feel like enough. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt the same way, doing a little bit more research on it, during my lunch break and doing a little bit more, just kind of finding out everything about, who Sarver was as a person. I mean, it does kind of baffle, and maybe it's not surprising to some people. You know what? No, it is surprising because I think what's disappointing is that, Donald Sterling's situation was handled by Adam Silver already, right? Because that was kind of the first thing that Adam Silver really had to deal with as being a commissioner of the NBA. And the fact that, again, we're in the same boat and situation where a guy that has continuously said the things that he has said, especially when we talk about the workplace environment. I mean, to me, it's 2022. This is no longer, the 80s, the 70s. I know as cliche as it is to sound, it makes no sense to me why there would be no, giving up of the team. And I don't know if it's because of some legality situation where they can't, make you get rid of a team, but in the best interest of ownership, the best interest of the NBA, they definitely have to disassociate themselves with the owner. And the fact that they did that with Donald Sterling, but couldn't do that with this guy, and the fact that Miles Leonard, another an NBA basketball player who said the stuff that he said on a live stream, basically is blacklisted from the NBA, and really hasn't gotten a job since the Miami Heat. How did he not get basically the boot? And that to me is what is kind of disappointing in all this, because again, he said the things that he said. It's very disparaging, it's hurtful, and it's not a culture where it's inviting, it's not welcoming, and it's frustrating to see that this guy continues to get a hall pass basically. Because I mean, what is a 1 year suspension for an owner? Can't stay at the arena. I mean, he's fine with that. He's staying in this palatial estate wherever he's living in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know if he's living in Phoenix
Yeah.
or Tempe or wherever he's living. Enjoying the lavish lifestyle that he has, while basically a $10 million fine. I mean, you could say that's a tax write off. You know what I mean? Like it could be one of those things where you
Yeah.
look at it and it's basically just a slap on the wrist. $10 million is probably like $1,000 fine to a person and that has to pay. That has is not as rich as the owner, right? A working person would
Yeah.
probably, it's $1,000 equivalent, at least to me. Again, maybe it's a little bit more, maybe it's a little bit less, but I don't know. I think it is disappointing to see that this guy got a pass, and the fact that it was under Silver's, kind of blessing, under his, watch, is a little disappointing.
I mean, that gets me back to what I was saying. I don't really understand how there's a universe in which they had enough evidence to get rid of this guy. They wouldn't do it, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't really behoove anybody. Nobody likes this guy. Nobody's defending Robert Sarver. There's no owners out there defending him. There's none of
Mhm.
that type of stuff going on. So, I mean, that's one thing too, is like, what even is a year suspension for one of these guys? I know you just said it, but I mean it literally. Like, what is that? What does that mean? Is he not in charge of the team for a year? It's still, he owns it.
Yeah.
Like he still has to partake in the signing of contracts and things of that nature, right? So it seems strange. Like when I first read it, I was curious like how strong this suspension is. Like, are they really like locking him out of doing anything with his team? On top of the
Mhm.
fine, or are they positioning it to make it so he would just be best off selling it? Like, that was
Mhm.
one of my
Yeah.
questions. It just, but when you stop and you keep looking at it, none of it seems like enough for him to do that. If he really doesn't want to sell it, why would this be enough to merit selling it? It's 1 year off and a $10 million fine. That's a mid-level buyout, basically.
Yeah.
That's like that's nothing. So he's not like I mentioned, he's not the richest owner. He doesn't spend his money very much. So maybe the 10 million is a big deal to him. I would be shocked if it was. But I have to wonder, like, what's the long-term plan? Like, can they just welcome this guy back with open arms, like to back into the NBA next year? Or what do the members of the team feel like,
Yeah.
It seems like such a mess, man. It seems like such a mess. I mean, this is one of
Mhm.
those things where the punishment, they almost got locked themselves in between a rock and a hard place. Like, now you have everybody on every side is upset. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what this is, man. I'm not sure. I just, like I keep saying, I can't say it enough. We knew that Donald Sterling was a bad dude, based on that recording that came out of, I believe it
Mhm.
was like his girlfriend at the time or somebody he
Yeah.
was with.
The mistress.
There wasn't very much evidence that came out besides that, which, mind you, I'm not arguing that doesn't make him a bad guy. That's enough. He should have been
Yeah.
gone, right? Rightfully so. My question is, like, that wasn't a ton of stuff if you compare it to this list of stuff for Robert Sarver. So I'm very curious if they have any like video footage. I don't know how they wouldn't in these corporate offices, but like video footage or audio recordings of
Mhm.
employees doing stuff. Like, if that stuff comes out and it's anywhere near the same as the Donald Sterling stuff
Yeah.
and they didn't get rid of him, the NBA is in for a world of hurt. And we live in the day and age of leaking stuff. So I'll be very interested to see how this progresses.
Yeah.
How the Phoenix Suns players are going to respond. Has any of the members of the Phoenix Suns said anything today?
I haven't seen anything so far on Twitter. I haven't seen anything in terms of an official statement from any of the team captains. I think that they're kind of going as is right now.
Yeah.
Um, and I just think that at the end of the day, they're going to have to figure out, you know, how to play. Because I mean, again, we saw this before with CP3 with Donald Sterling, and now again with a different owner this time. It
Mhm.
just it boggles my mind that we still live in a world and we still have people that are like this. I mean, again, it it is a frustrating thing to think about when you know the things that we want to talk about, you and I, people in the media, we don't want to talk about this guy. We shouldn't really
No.
know. We really shouldn't know who this guy is.
Yeah.
To
No, we
some
don't.
extent.
We don't want to hear about it? I just don't want to hear anything about this guy. Like when it comes down to it, you should be all for forwarding the game, forwarding, just social progress, whatever it is, all these positive things that you have the platform to do. That's the only thing I want to hear from these guys. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And if you are reaching into the lives of NBA fans like this and this despicable of a human being,
Hmm.
I feel like it's truly like we need to reach a point in time where these leagues look past just their own um,
Hmm.
their own like want and need for each other to be protected. Like that's what all these owners are doing. When it comes down to it, the only people looking out for these dudes are each other,
Yeah.
realistically. So you have in each given league, you have 30 or so, give or take a couple,
Hmm.
30 rich dudes who are defending each other, and that's enough to get guys like this out of these situations.
Yeah.
And that's so incredibly frustrating, man. Like that's the 0.0001% when it comes
Yeah.
down to it. So it's tough. And here I actually have a little bit more information on this real quick. Let me just
Yeah.
read this out. So according to ESPN's Baxter Holmes, Sarver will work with the NBA to find an interim governor for the Suns to fill in during suspension. So he is literally out of the team. He can't do anything with the team. They're going
Okay.
to find somebody to handle all of it, mutually agreed upon by the NBA and Sarver, which
Be the
I think
contract
that
signer.
alone is, yeah, I mean that to me is already you're doing too much for this guy. Why should he have a say? I mean, I guess it is his money, so in certain sense, like sure. One last paragraph I'm going to read real quick.
Yep.
Among the investigation's findings, the NBA said Sarver engaged. So this is kind of what you were just saying. Let me skip to the end. According to Holmes and ESPN colleague Adrian Wojnarowski, I always read that guy's
Mike
name so
Wazowski.
funny when I see it. Mike Wazowski. Sarver was unaccepting, quote unquote, of the idea that he deserved a year-long suspension and a $10 million fine. Like that. See, that's the point where if you have any morality as a league, any backbone to standing up to these rich billionaire guys, that's the point where you stop looking to help them out in any way. Like he's not even remotely apologetic, anything for all this stuff. And
Hmm.
that's just not the era we live in, man. Beyond whatever anybody thinks about cancel culture, beyond any of that, nobody wants to work in a place where this is how your boss treats you.
Yeah.
Nobody. And I personally am so sick and tired of the mentality of that's the way it is, and these are the people who pay your checks and pay for your rent and your food,
Hmm.
and they get to run their business how they want. That's absolutely just nonsense. It's just nonsense. We should
Hmm.
stop supporting these people who put that kind of energy in all of our lives and stop defending them. Like I've
Yeah.
seen people like actively out there not defending this guy, but also just more making the devil's advocate case of like he can run his business. Like, no, you shouldn't be able to do that. You really shouldn't. Because when it comes down to it, the NBA and these sports leagues, more than just about any other place where you might have a boss, the owner, the final decision maker is like
Hmm.
a fraction of what the actual business is.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be making any money if it wasn't for the team and the players on the team and all the people who run the organization that he's hired and pays. None of
Hmm.
that would exist if it wasn't for those people. So,
Yeah.
ah, it's tough, man. It's tough. I'm so sick of this guy. I'm glad he's going to be gone for at least a year. I wish it was longer forever, though.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we can both kind of come to the conclusion that the NBA got it wrong here. And the NBA really needs to, again, I think what this shows to me, Pete, is that I think it shows favoritism. And it shows favoritism in the fact that the owners, when Donald Sterling was going through whatever he was going through, with the Clippers at the time, they probably didn't like him as an owner. They probably despised him because he's probably one of those guys that they probably didn't like, probably
Yeah.
annoyed them. Whereas I feel like this guy, the owners like him for whatever reason. The owners like, well, it's kind of one of those the old adages, or when you think about would you really, if your best friend does a bad thing, you're going to be like, well, no, that's not really him. He doesn't really do it that way. But all the evidence points to that. So I just think it's kind of one of those situations where I, they just needed to keep that same energy that they did. Especially, what disappoints me the most, and I think I talked about it already, is the fact that Adam Silver was in charge of the Donald Sterling situation, but was not able to give that same punishment to Sarver. Makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, it truly doesn't make any sense. But I mean, it's super unfortunate because the last thing I'll say for this is you think about what if just a normal person, anybody who's not an owner, a player, whatever, anybody that's not worth millions plus, right? All it takes is you to say one thing out of turn, one thing, and your whole life is kaput in certain cases, right? And in certain instances, it's totally justifiable, right? But when you compare the punishment for this guy to even just the way that we treat the average person who makes a slip up, like what room is there for actual growth for individual human beings when this is what the value we put on each other, right? Like this guy has either ruined or at least made all these people that work for this organization's life so much harder. Said these awful things that any of them would have been fired in an instant if they were caught saying. And he can just get away with it. That's the true travesty of all of it. Like these people have to suffer and understand deep down that they're not worth as much as this guy is.
Yeah.
And I think that that's such a bad precedent for the NBA to set. That's such a bad precedent. If anybody I don't know. I got to get off this because it gets me so frustrated, man. Like this is, I don't want to get on a big political high horse. I won't do it. But this is kind of our country right now. We have all these people at the top and they get away with stuff like this.
Yeah, it is frustrating. And really quick, I'm just going to read Tar Heel Nation's comments. David Stern would have sent Sarver to the Shadow Realm. I've had enough of Adam Silver's player empowerment soft era. To me, Tar Heel Nation, that's more so on the fact that it's Adam Silver. Adam Silver was the one who banned Donald Sterling, like I said before. So, I'll agree to disagree on that one. Did you guys think that Sarver cost Steve Nash a ring by trading Joe Johnson to save money?
I mean, not necessarily that instance, like trading Joe Johnson to save money, maybe, right? But he certainly cost Steve Nash a ring by not spending money. He cost a lot of people rings by not spending money. That's kind of Sarver. I mean, the 06, 07 Suns, that era, that team was easily one of the three best teams in the league for 2 or 3 straight seasons, and they really definitely should have won a championship. But when it comes down to it, that's how Sarver runs a team. Yeah. That's just it.
Yeah. It is.
I mean, we just watched the DeAndre Ayton saga. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. We just watched all that. All it amounted to, they played hardball with this guy not to pay him. What realistically, DeAndre Ayton deserved the max. I mean, whether you like him or not, in today's league, players of his quality get the max. It's that simple. And they did not want to pay this guy. And then all it amounted to was matching and getting a 4-year deal at the max instead of the 5-year, which would have been a better deal. He's just a terrible owner in general for the league. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it is frustrating. And again, people, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys make of the story? Again, Sarver suspended a year, fined $10 million for all the accusations you can read here on the board. Man, look at me in teacher mode. You can read all this stuff that's here on the screen. So let us know in the comment section down below. Did the punishment fit what happened? Agree, disagree? Let us know in the comment section down below. All right, and then Tar Heel Nation, I'll read your comment quick before we move on to the next topic. The 7-second or less Suns, best team to never win a ring.
That's actually a good topic for another day. They're definitely up there. They're definitely up there. I would think of like the 2012 Thunder with KD, Harden, and Westbrook. I think that team is definitely in contention too. I mean, they weren't at their primes though, so you could argue it because of that. Yeah, let's go. We should come back to that, Bernie. Let's write that down somewhere. I like that idea.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that at some point. Talk about teams, best teams to never win a ring. But let's actually move on to the next topic really quick. And the next topic we're going to talk about really quick is we're going to talk about this Seattle Kraken CEO on the expansion. I know there was news out there that an AP reporter tweeted, then deleted. So this is what it talks about here. Seattle remains hopeful on bringing an NBA team back to the city, but they aren't getting ahead of themselves. Kraken CEO Todd Loecki expressed that the city is ready for an NBA return, but they won't get ahead of the NBA. When asked about the rumors that the NBA is ready to announce expansion teams, Lewicki said preferred not to address the rumors. I'm not going to address that. That's going to be a lot of rumors and innuendos. You know, we think the best thing that we can do is not get ahead of the league. Lewicki said they've got big issues coming. They're in a CBA discussion, and they've got broadcast deals coming up in due time. They will get to do this, and in due time, we're going to be well positioned. The
You know
Seattle.
what that means?
What
Oh,
does that
sorry.
mean?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that means that they already have a deal in place and there's a team coming to Seattle. I mean, that's
Yeah.
literally what that means. He wouldn't say that stuff and be so coy about it if there wasn't already some sort of under the table bargain already made, or just like an understanding that as soon as it happens, as soon as the opportunity presents itself, it's going to happen. I genuinely think this gets announced like sometime in the next, I would say 7 months, I would say.
Yeah. And then really quick, let's see here. Did say the Seattle and the prospect ownership group have set the stage for an NBA return. You know, without kind of reading the rest of this article, I think it is safe to say that the NBA is probably going to return to Seattle at some point. It's just, I think the people of Seattle, and you could clearly tell by the energy of the game last night with the Broncos and the Seahawks. You know, whether you agree or disagree with the booing is a different sport and a different conversation. The passion and energy is there here in Seattle. I think a lot of people, we even talked about the Pro-Am in Seattle a couple of weeks back. Everyone is excited about the NBA. And I think that as soon as the league can kind of figure out with the CBA deal and, you know, the broadcasting stuff, I think that they want something up here, man. It makes no sense, man. It makes no sense why the NBA is not here in Seattle in 2022. Because I think the market's there. Everybody's excited about sports. And I think it is a sport loving city. You know, does it have the history of a, you know, Chicago and New York or even in LA? No, but it has.
I mean, we got more history than other places. That's for sure. We have a championship in Seattle.
Probably a little bit more better than Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not known for their basketball. You know,
True.
And not to dig the Thunder, but I am going to dig the Thunder just a little bit. But, you know, we love basketball here. I mean, this is a basketball city. We think about the history of all the high school teams here in Seattle. Think about all the Metro teams that are here. Think about all the players that played in Seattle that are part of the NBA right now. You know, Banchero and DeJounte Murray, just to name a few. And that's a very few. There's a lot more. Kevin Porter Jr., Matisse Thybulle,
Michael Porter Jr.
Michael Porter Jr. I mean, there's so many people that have played in the Seattle area. And the fact that the history is there and the fact that there's no team here is a big crime.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we haven't even said yet, and probably the most important part of it all, right? Beyond just the city of Seattle, the NBA has literally never been deeper than it is right now. Whether you think teams could beat teams in the 90s, I genuinely don't care. You know, whatever the old heads say, I mean, whatever. It just doesn't matter. New school, old school fans, it genuinely does not matter your personal taste to what basketball is right now. It's, I would say, factually true that the NBA is deeper than it's ever been before. With the integration of international basketball and just all these players growing up everywhere with the ability to watch coaches on YouTube, go to different places and learn these skills that guys in the 90s and 80s and 70s could only dream of learning, right? It's only going to get more deep too. So, you know, you look at the growth that just like the G League has undergone and some of these other places, and look at, you mentioned it too, the Pro-Am game that was in Seattle, but just look at the Drew League, how much interest there was for summer basketball this year and last year. it gets more and more every season. So you think there's got to be a place for some of these other guys, because you're going to start getting to a point where legitimately great players can maybe miss out on playing in the NBA because it's such a deep league. So
Yeah.
you just add a few more teams. Let's get those 2 teams in there. I mean, dude, in a fantasy world, it would be so amazing if this was the off season and then, they did their expansion draft. I mean, imagine going into the 2023 season, that expansion draft and what those teams would look like. I mean, that's going to be so incredibly hype, not just for people in Seattle or Las Vegas. I mean, that's interesting for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the preseason hype is here in Seattle. I mean, Tar Heel Nation, you talked about it here. You know, what section are you guys sitting in for the preseason? I'm not sure if we are gonna go. I'm interested in going, but that's probably an offline conversation at some point. But I think it would be a fun thing to go to and just kind of again see that atmosphere in an NBA setting and really get the feeling of it. So it might be worth going at some point.
Well, and two, you think between some of the summer stuff that was going on and, obviously these preseason games, I mean, it's all leading up to that announcement. It's a trial run for the arena to see what they need, how it's set up to host that many people. I mean, we're getting there. We're getting really close.
Exactly. And so, you kind of made me think, Tar Heel Nation, I'll probably go and just kind of report back on a different day, talking about the experience. So that might be something to look into. So I actually might do it. And I work like pretty close to the Seattle area, so it's a perfect opportunity there. Actually, shoot, it's a Monday. I might have to do the Sunday one actually, or whenever the Friday.
Yeah, let's look at it because I might go with you.
Okay. But with that being said, again, the Seattle area, we are looking forward to basketball again. This is just rumors so far. We're still looking into it, but I think at the end of the day, we're going to get the history back. I think we're going to get the team back. And I think with having a team here, instead of trying to drive 3 hours to Portland and then back, so 6 hours total, plus the game, I mean, that's a lot of travel for someone that's committed to ball. And so I'm hoping that the NBA can, again, get a team in here, let us have it. But let us know in the comment section down below, what do you guys make of Seattle potentially getting a team relatively soon? As soon as the CBA is done talked about, I think that's another topic to discuss in the future. But let's talk about it later on down the line when we get there. So again, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys make of this rumor? All right, let's see here. Let's talk about this before we get to Pete's topic of the week, sponsored by Pete himself. Let's talk about this NBA in-season tournament. So the current framework, according to Shams Wojnarowski, is this. The NBA could have an in-season tournament as soon as the 2023-2024 season. Adam Silver has pushed for this, and the success of the NBA's play-in tournament and the WNBA's Commissioner Cup, except for the trophy, they need to get him a better trophy, have given him the leverage. According to Shams, The Athletic, the NBA has figured out the tournament's in-season logistics and laid out the teams. So the current framework of the NBA in-season tournament, I'll scroll down for you guys so you can read it as well, as soon as the 24 season reports. Cup games through November, 8 teams advance to a single elimination final. In December, the other 22 continue with the regular season. All games part of the normal 82 season schedule. 1 extra for 2 final teams. The NBA and the NBAPA are still working on finalizing the in-season tournament concept, which includes to be determined prizes for 8 teams that advance to the single elimination round, sources say. So again, much like the WNBA Commissioner's Cup, the goal is to blend most of this into the regular season for the teams. For example, a standard midweek Celtics versus Knicks game in early November could be designated a tournament game and take on additional weight. Okay, so basically what they're trying to do is just find a game in the week and just say, boom, this is now officially Commissioner Silver's Cup, or whatever it is. They called it the Cup in the WNBA. I don't mind it because I think it will add a little bit of intrigue to some extent, but it looks like the NBA players are behind it, so I want to give it a chance. But what do you make about it, Pete? Do you think it's a good idea? Bad idea?
God, I'm super conflicted. This might be one of the biggest like I'm so torn in between NBA issues maybe ever in the history of the NBA.
Hmm.
Maybe not issue, but discussions.
Yeah.
Because I think it creates a situation where I think people are going to lose focus, right? And in what the real true end goal of every NBA season is, and that's
Hmm.
being the champion, right? And I don't necessarily mean the players or the teams. I actually just mean like fans. Like I think there's going to be people who are just ridiculous about this and make it more important than it is. Um, and I think in a certain way that's kind of like the NBA is almost maybe that groundwork is fun. Like it's fun in concept, and I like you said, I like how much it puts a weight to these games and makes must watch television in a month that is otherwise maybe not must
Hmm.
watch, right? The problem is like how hard are you going to be able to convince these guys to go? And we talked about this before. What is truly the award? Is it the free you get one free get out of tampering jail free card, right? I highly doubt it, right? But it would be very interesting to see first what the prize is, what you
Yeah.
get for winning this, because there's already a drawback. If you win the tournament, you're playing an extra game. Even if you make it to the finals, you're playing an extra game, which to some people you might say it's just one game, shut up, but it is an extra game in an already really long season, right?
Hmm.
So that might be a detriment to certain people. Certain people might say, well, do we really want to win that extra game? Does it really matter that much? Maybe not. Ah, man. I
Yeah.
like it, but I think it needs to get toned down a little bit. I think it's too much in that format that you just read out. I think that sounds like do we really need a full month of that in the middle of the season? Maybe not, man. I would argue if they got rid of some regular season games and did it that way and kept that format, it would be better that way.
Yeah. I mean,
Continuing with the 82 games is a lot.
yeah. I mean, it is a very interesting situation because if you think about it, it's basically like having a double jeopardy. You never know when the NBA is just going to decide, boom, this game is now a tournament game. And I think that with maybe that's the unpredictability about this tournament. You never know when a game will just be
Yeah.
randomly selected to be a in-season tournament game. Like each team has to be like ready and kind of waiting for the wheel to spin, and then boom, it hits like Clippers Blazers in a play-in tournament.
Mm.
I, Again, I'm conflicted too because I think that an in-season tournament is not a bad idea because I think what it does, at least in what this article talks about a little bit, is the fact that it does add some intrigue into the NBA for the first couple months, right? Because we know, and in the article says it too, like the season doesn't really start for a lot of NBA fans until um until Christmas, right? A lot of people view
Yeah.
Christmas as like the start date for the NBA. And so if you can kind of make some intriguing kind of playoff matchups and things like that, again, the issue is that we also have to think about the Commissioner's Cup in the WNBA. Like I didn't really care too much for it. It wasn't something that I was really paying attention to, other than the fact that the trophy was the smallest thing, and it looked like it was ordered from Amazon Prime, delivered next day because they didn't have a trophy available. That's what it looked like to me. And so, again, can the NBA make an interest for the league? And I just think that it's impossible at this point, especially when you think about what sports are coming up, right? The NFL coming up, you know, as much as we love basketball here on the Charge, we can't deny the fact that that the NFL is one of the most popular sports in America. Like
Oh, it
everybody, and
kills the NBA.
it
Yeah.
just kills them. And it's the same thing for playoff baseball. Like again, you're trying to play these games and tournament games in a season where I just think it's a lose-lose for the NBA. And it really kind of makes me think that maybe the NBA should think about starting at Christmas and ending a little bit later in June or July. Because
Yeah.
I think that would make the most sense. Because again, not saying that baseball is going to overtake the NBA in viewership or anything like that, but I think if you can get past like playoff baseball, let them do their thing, and then you start the season, then you're only competing with one thing, and that's the NFL. In the NFL, you're only competing on Sundays anyway. You're not competing every single day like the NBA does with their games. And so,
True.
personally, I think that's the better solution, is not to make you can have your in-season tournament, but move the season later in the year. Make Christmas the opening day. I mean, that'd be an exciting thing. I mean, it's the same thing, when the NFL starts, like last week, I was excited. I think everybody was excited. Maybe people that aren't
Mhm.
NFL guys, maybe they're not excited, but the idea of like opening weekend for the NFL is the biggest hype thing in the world. I think the NBA needs that, and I think if you do that for the Christmas time, you're synonymous. It's the same thing. It's popular in English soccer. Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, for my European viewers. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's excited for those games. It's the same thing that you can do for the NBA. Have the Christmas games going on while doing all that stuff, and I think that you would have so much more excitement. There'd be a lot more interest instead of this NBA playoffs starting so early. Start them later. Start them in like June or July, or maybe July. But
Well, sure, and realistically too, if you wanted to make things more exciting, Joe, like I mentioned earlier, just get rid of regular season games. Like that is where people lose interest the most. Whether they think it is or not, that is what happens in basketball. That's what happens in baseball. It even happens for a lot of people in football, which is crazy because there's only 17 regular season weeks. Is there 18 regular season weeks or 17?
For
There's 18 with the bye week, right? For the NFL. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
even down the stretch, people lose interest in those regular season games. And there's not many of them. A lot less than the other sports. But if you think of basketball and baseball in particular, that slog of those meaningless games for half the league at certain points of the season, that's truly where you lose most of your viewership, And I can speak for myself. Like, I know the way my brain works, if I'm all the way in on something until I start to lose focus, and then if I lose focus, it's hard for me to get back into it. Even if I'm super interested in the thing, it's just like the stop-start of it all is hard for me, So I would say if they really, truly wanted to do this in-season tournament, scratch off some regular season games. Don't do this hybrid thing where you have some teams are playing regular season games, because then think of the viewership for those games. How are you going to have these regular season games for these other teams compete with the in-season games going on? And I would say that they probably just wouldn't care. They would want you to watch the tournament games because that's what's going to be on the big media channels. But why would those other teams be playing those games then? Like, just get them off the court. Then you have healthier people for the playoffs, healthier people for this in-season tournament, and people are focused more on the actual league throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Creating consistent interest. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Sean says, do the tournament. I want it. Whatever Sean wants, he gets. So he'll be...
Yep. All right. We'll call Adam.
We're calling Silver right now. We're calling Mr. Silver, and we're letting him know that Sean wants it, so it needs to happen. And again, it will happen in the 2023 season. We're going to find out next year, which is crazy to think that next year officially the tournament starts. We're going to find out if it's going to be successful or not. Again, I think it would be interesting if they kind of did it the way that I talked about, which is just, Jeopardy it and just say, hey, today is a tournament game. Suit up. Or just like something crazy. I mean, I know they won't ever do that because they need to keep people in the loop. But, I think it'd be a very interesting situation to kind of find out what's going to be going on there. So, people, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys make of an in-season tournament? Are you a fan of it? Are you not a fan of it? And if you are, do you agree that they should be doing it like a Jeopardy? Or should they be telling the players and the team when those games are going to be? Like I said, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys make of this in-season tournament?
All right. Before we get to the next topic, I have one last question I want to pose you. All right.
Go ahead.
I had one more idea for a prize you could get if you win.
What's the prize? What we getting?
What if it's very similar to my other one in terms of the fact that you just kind of get a card that you get to play whenever you want to play it, right? What if you get to choose one game in the playoffs that becomes a home game or something like that? I think that'd be super fun. What if you could literally say that would have the best teams competing for it? You'd have everybody competing for it if you're a playoff team. The only problem is then you would eliminate a lot of teams not interested in making it to the playoffs or not even considering getting to the playoffs. Why would they need that reward, right?
Yeah.
But I think that would be pretty interesting. Like if you could go, say, you come up against the 1 seed and they have their home game for game 7, but you won the in-season tournament, you can flip that around. It's like a Uno reverse card, you know?
It's the
That'd
reverse
be
Uno card. Okay.
Uno reverse card. I think that'd be pretty tight.
Yeah. I mean, the
I'd be
only
open to that. I think mess with the format, man.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting thing to do, kind of like a, hey, we get to kind of pick and flip. So let's say, for example, you get to pick the order of the games in terms of like, okay, you're the eighth seed and you won, right? We want our home
Mm-hmm.
games first. You could say, I want those home games first, and you could kind of flip like the two orders there, but then kind of keep the advantage for the home team with the last part of that schedule if it goes to like a 7-game series. Now,
Because would I was just gonna say, wouldn't it be so interesting if like the winner of the tournament got like a few options of prizes they could take, right? Like you got to choose like
the
let's
mystery
just keep my
box.
theoretic. Yeah, not a mystery box. Like let's say there's 3 choices, right? And it would really truly depend on what your team is like, where you're
Hmm.
competing, what you're competing for, like what the realistic outcome of your team is, right?
Yeah.
And let's say it's one, let's say it's the tampering thing, right? Let's say you get the card for the get out of tampering free. You
Hmm.
also get you have the option for the playoffs teams if they want to choose to like swap a home game or get an extra home game in a series, right? I think that would be super interesting. It would add like a whole different dynamic to the whole
Hmm.
league. Like there would be some actual suspenseful drama. Like in terms of each season, the team could pick whatever team wins could pick something different. It could be
Yeah.
different every year.
Yeah, I mean that wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, again, I think it would be a fun thing to do. I think it'd be fun to, again, mess with some stuff and kind of tinker with it, see it how it plays out. And if it doesn't work out, you can always revert back and kind of play from there. Because I think at the end of the day, yes, money is important to these players, but with the way that contracts are in the NBA, with the way things are, they're not really going to be missing out. I mean, for again, some people are going to take that extra shift to get that extra, whatever, $300 for their,
Yeah.
for their salary. It's going to be the same thing for the NBA players, but I think that some players are going to be more. They're going to be the intrinsic value of like maybe messing up an NBA, home away schedule. Maybe they get to. Maybe they want to say, hey, we want to play at a neutral site as kind of one of their prizes.
Mhm.
Again, there's a lot of things that you can do with it. I think that the league should look into it because I think it would make it a little bit more interesting of a prize instead of here's some extra money for winning the cup. Like for the WNBA, it makes sense because of the way that the salaries are constructed, with the way that the revenue is for the WNBA. It makes sense to make a money incentive tournament because they're not making as much as the NBA players are. Whereas I feel like the NBA players need a little bit more of an incentive.
Yeah. I totally agree. That's why I think it needs to be some like team wide prize. Like the whole team needs to be invested in it.
They get those
And if there was an option, like what if the I mean I don't think they would ever do that. It's not even a think. They would never do this. But you could even do this Uno reverse card where it like you could negatively impact another team. Okay, we're taking Jason Tatum. He doesn't get to play game 1. He's out. That we're using our card now. He's out for this one. I'm I'm turning the NBA into Yu-Gi-Oh. Let's move on. We need to
Yeah.
get out of this.
Yeah, you're
Turning it
retcon
into a card game, Bernie.
yeah, you're retconning everything in your simulation.
Yeah,
Uh all right, Pete. You know what time it is. It's
it's my
them
sponsored segment.
it's your sponsored segment. The Pete sponsored segment, NBA trade machine. Trades that could or could not work. I'll let you
So,
I'll let you lead it.
right, this is what I want us to do. Okay, I'm gonna name a player. Okay,
Okay?
I want us to discuss how realistic a trade is for the person. One, this is step one of my little segment here. Discuss the realism of them actually being traded. Two, I want you on the trade machine there to,
Okay.
if we decide to go to the next step and say this is a realistic person that might be traded, let's then start looking for a realistic trade. Not forever for each of these guys. I only have a
Yeah.
few. Um, But then we have a little bit of a discussion for each of these people. We could try and figure out what teams actually make sense for them to go
Hmm.
to and discuss even if we think they're going to get traded. Because I might name people that you disagree with in terms of whether they're going to get traded, where they should get traded.
Okay.
Let's read Sean's comment real quick. The tourney should just be built into the regular season. The tourney game should definitely count for your record. I agree with you, but that's something they're going to have to figure out. I think that little disorganized mess of that format is a lot. All right, Bernie, here we go. I'm gonna start low,
Okay.
just role players and kind of work my way up. There are guys I would like to see traded. I think they're pretty realistic too. Number one,
Jalen Brunson.
Terrence Ross,
Terrence
Orlando
Ross.
Magic.
Okay, let me.
Terrence Ross is a player I've never truly understood why is still on Orlando. Terrence Ross, he's got to be like a top tier, fun to watch, but just you never see him player. Like he's right up in that category. But he's a guy that there's so many guards on Orlando. There's too much youth there. They don't need Terrence Ross. What do you think about him being traded? I think we've heard him in trade rumors for probably 5 straight years now, but I think this is the year it finally happens. What do you think?
I think that potentially could be a good trade person, like in terms of, again, thinking about people that don't fit the timeline, thinking about people that, do they fit in the plans of what the Orlando Magic are trying to do, right? We think about who they have right now. They have Bol, they have Mo Bamba, Banchero, they have Gary Harris, they have Wendell Carter Jr., Markelle Fultz, Jonathan Isaac, Franz Wagner, who's, again, one of their key guys, Cole Anthony. I mean, they are riddled with guards. And the
Too
fact
many
that,
guards.
and they just signed Joel Ayayi today to their team. So again, you're adding a lot of guards to this roster. And so eventually someone has to be the odd man out. And I think Terrence Ross might have to be that guy because he potentially could be a guy that looks to move on and to maybe a contender team. Maybe a contender looks to get him.
Yeah, here's my team I'll pose for Terrence Ross. Team I was interested. I think they could use some more guard help, some scoring off the bench. What do you think about the Dallas Mavericks for Terrence Ross?
Dallas Mavericks.
They have some pretty tradable contracts on their squad. I mean, his contract is insanely tradable nowadays, 11.5 expiring. There's a lot of people that would line up. Whether you even have to give up players to even get that guy on that contract, I'm not sure. But looking at Dallas, they have a lot of like these lower end guys making like $2-3 million that I could see just not being worth much to them. I think a guy like Terrence Ross would be pretty valuable to them, especially losing Brunson, some guard depth, some scoring off the bench when Luka's not around. And just considering how often injured Tim Hardaway Jr. seems to be in recent years too, I think that's something to consider for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, what would be a realistic trade here? I mean, you have Terrence Ross as kind of one of the guys. Who do you give away for the Mavericks at this point?
See, the problem is, I think your gut instinct would say somebody like Reggie Bullock would be the first person you'd look at, right?
Yeah.
But I think just threw my microphone. I'm sorry to everybody who just got their ears punished by that. Excuse me. I honestly think if anybody I would like to see get traded off of Dallas, and maybe there's Dallas fans that would disagree with me, I think Maxi Kleber was so bad in the playoffs in certain stretches, like just could not be out on the court. And I think their contracts match up pretty well. I think, what is he, like $9 million, something like that? Might even be an expiring too.
$9 million, but according to the trade, just straight up would fail.
That would fail. What's the fail? Is Dallas over the cap already? They probably are.
Yeah,
they probably have to give up something else.
So cut $150,000 from the Mavericks incoming trades to be successful. So the Mavericks need to trade probably just one more person. So you'd probably want to
just something cheap. Nit Lakina, just throw him on there, or Theo Pinson. Why not him? Somebody like that. I think that's pretty realistic. Like Maxi Kleber's not bad depth in terms of getting somebody. Like there's a lot of teams that would use him, whether Orlando wants to keep him or not. And Dallas, I'm just throwing them out there. Somewhere realistic, somebody that could use some guard depth, a guy that's a vet, doesn't need a ton of minutes, and can give you 10, 15 off the bench pretty easily. I think that'd be a nice fit for everybody involved.
Yeah, so Terrence Ross for Kaliba and Nitlakina would work in
There
this
you go.
sense.
Send him.
But according to the analysis, you would not affect the winning percentage of each team.
There you go. See, I wouldn't actually necessarily do Nitwakina. I think he gives them a lot of good defense off the bench too. Even though Frankie Smokes has his issues, he can't score to save his life. But it's something. It's something.
Yeah.
That's just our beginner. Let's move on to somebody maybe a little bit bigger. Somebody else we could talk about.
All right, who are you thinking?
In this one, I already have another team in mind for this guy. I think I might maybe have even seen some rumblings of this, but not a ton, not all over the
Rumblings.
place. I wouldn't even have suggested it if it was all over the place. What about Eric Gordon? Your
Eric,
Boston Celtics, Bernie.
Eric Gordon. What team is Eric Gordon on this? Is he
Plays for the
Houston?
Houston
Still in the
Rockets.
Rockets?
Still on the Rockets.
So Eric Gordon, okay. To the Celtics. Okay. So who are we giving up if we're the Celtics?
That's kind of why I wanted to bring this one to you. I think first of all, would you even be interested in adding somebody like Eric Gordon to your team? I would say he shot above 43% or about 43% on catch and shoot threes last season. Just as like a shooter, you don't get much better in terms of just a role playing shooting guard who can get his own shot, get open. He doesn't demand a lot from the rest of the people around him. The one thing I would argue is really tough with this trade for the Celtics. You guys actually somehow have a lot of guards. I don't think of your team as having a ton of guards because none of them are superstars or even really stars. Sorry, Marcus
Yeah.
Smart, I love you, but you're not really necessarily a star.
Yeah.
But they're all super above solid. Like they're not necessarily people you would bench for Eric Gordon. So I think the question would be, would you prefer somebody like Eric Gordon to Derek White? And I would say you probably would rather have Derek White for his defense, right?
I mean, I'd rather have Derek White because I think in last year's kind of finals and what he
Mhm.
showed in the Eastern Conference Finals, he showed that he can be a big time gamer. I think with Eric Gordon, I think he's a good player, but I think after playing so many years on a team that didn't prioritize winning the way that
Sure.
the Celtics have, I think Eric Gordon probably suits this Rockets team a little bit more because they need that veteran leadership on this squad with so many young players. We think of guys like Kenny Martin Jr., we think of Josh Christopher, Garuba, Kevin Porter Jr., Fernando, uh, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith. I mean, all those guys need a veteran leader on this team. And I just feel like Eric Gordon fits that role for the Rockets. So I think the Celtics are actually fine where they're at right now, just because I
Mhm.
feel like they have the pieces that I like and could see working out. It's the Eric Gordon one where I think they just need to let him be the leader of the Houston Rockets. So I would probably say no to Eric Gordon moving over to the Celtics.
All right. Well, let me give you another option for old Eric Gordon. I came prepared for this because
Oh, he came prepared. Came with
came
that.
prepared for this because I looked at this and I was thinking like I like the idea of him on the Celtics, but I wasn't necessarily taking into account the Brogdon signing. I think if you didn't have Brogdon, it would be a different story. I think you probably
Yeah.
could really use him,
Hmm.
especially with a lot of the ball handling issues that the
Yeah.
Celtics were running into in the playoffs. I think that's something to be considered. But here's another team. I actually would think be a great fit for him. What do you think about Eric Gordon coming off the bench for the Phoenix Suns? I know we just talked about them, but I think this makes a lot of sense for everybody involved. Um,
Okay.
here's the depth of guards or of shooting guards, twos behind old Devin Booker. All right, their second shooting guard off the bench is Landry Shamet, and then third is Damian Lee, and then they have Josh Okogie as fourth. Right,
Hmm.
Eric Gordon is better than Landry Shamet, certainly. I I don't know if there's any universe in which Landry Shamet is better than Eric Gordon. And I think, after seeing Landry Shamet on just about every other team in the NBA in the last few years, I feel like he's been traded all over the place. It's funny I say this because Landry Shamet is almost like new age, new gen Eric Gordon, where I feel like every time I look, he's on a different team. But the thing with Landry Shamet is that he really loses the one thing he's great at, which is 3-point shooting in the playoffs. Like Landry Shamet is not really known for his clutch buckets. That's not necessarily his thing. So I would like to see this team go get some more shooting, some more consistent scoring, because we saw what happened to them in Dallas. It wasn't in Dallas, it was in Phoenix, but we saw what happened to them against Dallas in terms of what happens when your top two guys don't have it. What happens when Devin Booker isn't making shots? What happens when Chris Paul isn't making shots? What happens when Chris Paul's hurt? Because then you have Cameron Payne is your next line of defense, right? I like this move in terms of getting Eric Gordon, just in the versatility of replacing Chris Paul and Devin Booker just under any bad circumstances. He's a great fit between those guys, and just he can slot in either of their spots when the other one's sitting down. So I like this trade. I did not do any trade machine to see if this would work in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so we have Eric Gordon. You're trading Shamit. Who else are you getting rid of? Because you're going to need to match it. You're going to need probably another $10 million to get this going.
Dude, the tough thing is it would have to probably be between. It would probably be Saric or Jay Crowder.
Who are you getting rid of? Who's going?
God, that's really tough. I might make people mad here. I would probably get rid of Jay Crowder over Dario Saric. And I know that's something to be said about, we've seen Jay Crowder work in playoff moments, make it far, be a great defender, but he's getting older. I really like what I've seen from Dario Saric when he's healthy. He was just hurt all of last season. I don't know. That's a tough one. Well, I don't know. Do you have a better answer than me?
I think Jay Crowder works. I mean, I think, again, for me, Jay Crowder continues to not show up in the playoffs. That's what
I mean. That's how I feel.
That's been his MO for the last couple of years now. I mean, the Miami Heat team against the Lakers, he was a no-show. And then this past year with the Phoenix Suns, no-show.
Look, Houston gets better in that trade. It's a win-win for everybody.
I mean, my thing is, too, is Jay Crowder made so much noise in last year's playoffs. Not last year's, but the year before when he beat, or actually, no, it was last year when they beat the Lakers, or whenever they beat the Lakers in the playoffs.
It's 2 years ago, yeah.
He was bumping his chest, celebrating, saying, take that to the king and other things like that. I don't know. I'm in the belief that you trade away Jay Crowder, you trade away Shamit, get Eric Gordon. I think that's probably a better trade. And like you said, it adds the depth that they need in the backcourt for a guy that, has 2 years left on his contract, 19 mil. You're getting rid of two guys there for Jay Crowder and Shamit, who, again, good players in the regular season, just hasn't shown it in the playoffs. And, I would love to see Eric Gordon in the playoffs again to kind of see if he can be that guy or, if he won't be.
Well, I would just say think of their shooting if they had the three of them out on the court too, just Booker, Paul, and Gordon. I mean, that's a small lineup. You're not getting a lot of defense from that, but just offensively, he's a solid option. People haven't seen Eric Gordon play since James Harden left this team, really. But he's still the same guy. Whether you like him, you love him, you hate him, whatever. He's a solid guard off the bench. He's a great six man in terms of getting you points and getting you buckets. And like you said, he's solid veteran leadership too. He's not necessarily somebody you hear anything bad about or, starts any fuss with his teammates. So it's a type of guy that I think the Phoenix Suns could use. And realistically, I think of that team and I think of that 50-point blowout. And I think of just seeing dudes take open shots and miss open shots.
Yeah.
So if I'm them, I look at Landry Shamet, I look at guys like Jay Crowder, and I think I need more consistent scoring than what you guys give me in big moments. And I think Eric Gordon can give you that. You've seen him score major buckets in big games at different stretches of his career. So I'm glad I convinced you of one a little bit.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
All right. Next player. This guy is another level above Eric Gordon, okay?
Oh. Rising up.
He's not a superstar, but he's somebody I think should be dealt from the team he's on. And this is one I come very ill prepared in terms of what team he should go to. But I think there's teams that would take him, and that's Richaun Holmes from Sacramento. I like Richaun Holmes a lot. Okay. He is certainly not going to get a lot of minutes on Sacramento with some of their recent acquisitions. I mean, he'll still get minutes for Sacramento. But the problem is I think Richaun Holmes is better than that. I don't necessarily think he's a world beater or anything, but I think there's people who could use Richaun Holmes. I would have said Philly before they got Montrez. I would
Yeah.
have said he would have been a great pickup for them. He has a little bit of shooting. He's just super consistent. That's the thing with Rashawn Holmes that I've always liked. And he's on a great contract too.
Yeah.
So, do you think it's realistic that he gets traded, first of all?
I think it could be done. I think it depends on what you're looking for. I think if I am, one of these, I think a team that comes to mind for me would be a team like the Brooklyn Nets, since they're deciding to keep
Sure.
those two guys. They should try to go for him. Lakers should definitely try to go for him as kind of like that rebounding big. Especially to pair up with Anthony Davis, I think that'd be a great actual little addition to the Lakers that could make them really good this year in terms of adding that value on defense and also rebounding, which again any team needs. Um, I think Brooklyn would probably benefit from getting Holmes the most, in my opinion, because they definitely are a team that's,
Yeah.
especially after last year, you saw, especially when Kevin Durant and Kyrie were missing shots, the ball the majority of the time ended up in the opposing team's hands, and
Yeah, it did.
and even though that's the way it's supposed to be in basketball, there was no one there on the Brooklyn Nets where I was like, okay, this guy could go get an offensive rebound and help out and get you guys an extra 2 points that, a possession normally would end in a transition bucket for the other team. So I'm curious to look at Brooklyn. Is there a team that you think of when it comes to Holmes?
You know, a team I would love to see him on, and it's not super realistic in terms of like he wouldn't necessarily go there and be a starter, so it kind of goes against what I just said with him. Even though I think there's a universe in which he is the starter in like a year or so, it's Milwaukee. Because I
Milwaukee was a
look at
good
that
team. Good
team,
shout.
I look at that team, and I think of the stretch they had without what's his name, big boy, Brooke Lopez, right? And that was in the regular season, so it didn't really matter very much. But say that was in the playoffs, right? And, we saw them lose because they didn't have Chris Middleton. That's a different discussion altogether. But say they had gotten to the playoffs without Brooke Lopez, I think we would have seen something pretty similar because their center depth is really pathetic in Milwaukee. And they kind of get away with it because you have a guy like Giannis who can do anything. He can play center, he can play power forward, he can literally play every position. And they kind of have the B level of that, or maybe even the C level in Bobby Portis, right? I think he's actually listed on the team as a center. He's their second, I think, in their depth chart at center. But he's not like, to me, I don't think Bobby Portis, I think center is not, those two things don't go hand in hand for me. I don't
Yeah.
think that's his true position. So I would argue like just having somebody like Rashawn Holmes as maybe the bulk of your center play, and then Brooke Lopez as your specialist, because Brooke Lopez is almost mid-30s. I think he's 34. So there's a universe in which the wheels start to come off on Brooke Lopez soon. And if I'm Milwaukee, I want to look at reasonable price centers, somebody not necessarily going to stretch the floor like Brooke does, but just give you something, some versatility, some length. And the thing with Rashawn Holmes, I think that goes understated. It's not reflected in his stats. Is he's very athletic. Like he's super versatile. Like how long and just how fast he is down the court. So
Uh-huh.
I would like to see him on Milwaukee. I think that'd be a fun trade for everybody involved because I think Milwaukee could get or not Milwaukee, but Sacramento. I don't know what they would get in return. Probably like Grayson Allen would probably have to be part of it.
I
I
mean,
think
you
his
could.
contract makes sense.
You could do a straight swap for Brooke Lopez. Brooke Lopez for Holmes and kind of migrate and
Start
move
moving
on.
a little younger.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something, but I also think that's a little risky because I really love the 3-point shooting you get from Brooke. I think that is
Yeah.
important to the team. So that would work. I mean, if you're playing it safe and just want to move off of his contract, he's an expiring, I believe, this
Mm-hmm.
year, Brooke. That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm looking at the Sacramento Kings right now. It'd be a tough way to get Holmes for the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah. It
I
would
just
not it would not be easy going. It wouldn't be. It's not the Brooklyn doesn't have a lot of room to do anything, to be
yeah.
totally honest with you. They don't. But he would be a great fit on their team.
Yeah. Trying to see if the Lakers would have a fit. probably could.
I'll check that out. Let's check that out because I think he'd be an awesome fit on their team. I mean, you have a guy who's a center that doesn't want to play center, so
Yeah. Otherwise, you kind of rely on Thomas Bryant being like the main guy.
yeah, that's not good. It's not good.
Man, they have a lot of guys on their roster, and I think it's all contracts that still need to be paid or something. Okay, you get rid of Kendrick Nunn because he has yet to play a game.
He still might not be healthy too, based on some reports that are out there.
Yeah, and then you get rid of. Do you get rid of Damian Jones and?
Gosh, yeah, you probably could. Why not? Yeah, they could make that work. I think. The problem is they would have to give up some of their stuff, like a pick or two. You know, one of those picks. The thing with the Lakers is I really think their best move is that Indiana package. Like if it comes to getting something to be competitive this season, I like the fit of Rashawn Holmes on their team. It's just you could get more value in return for somebody like Westbrook going to the Pacers and getting Buddy Hield and what's his name, Miles Turner back in return.
Yeah,
because Miles Turner is like we could have a very similar discussion about Miles Turner. I thought Rashawn Holmes is more interesting to talk about than Miles Turner. Everybody always talks about Miles Turner getting traded.
Yeah, let's see here. Sean,
all right. Yeah, go ahead.
Sean wants John Collins.
He was on my list of trade potential people to bring up and talk about. I still think he's going to get dealt from Atlanta.
He said to the Wizards.
Rui, Kuzma, and Kispert.
So John Collins.
Kinda.
For Kuzma.
I kind of like that trade, Sean. I kind of like that.
Whoops, didn't mean to click on Kispert. Kispert and Hachimura.
I'm trying to think of John Collins, Rui, Kuzma, and Kispert. Who says no? For what reason?
So
I feel like that's kind of a win for both teams.
Let's see here. So the Wizards would be at a +1, and the Hawks would be at a -2.
But the trade works, right?
The trade works.
Dang, man, I kind of like that trade. If I'm Atlanta, I would probably want to pick too. I'd probably want to pick on top of that because John Collins is better than those three guys for sure. Like he's definitely better than those three guys. I like the idea of getting Kispert though to replace Herter, just as like a 3-point shooting white guy off the bench.
Yeah, I was gonna say the 3-point white guy. That's
yeah, why not? You need some 3-point shooting white guys off the bench. Can't ever hurt. All right, let's move on to the next one.
All right, what's your next one?
I know that you know
that I know
the one that I created the segment for the person. Okay, Bernie. I know you know the person that I'm referring to, so we're gonna save him for last. Okay. And we're gonna skip the tier that I would say he's in, and we're gonna move to the next tier, which is like superstars, potential superstars who could be traded this season.
Okay.
Right? My first gut instinct when I was putting this together and writing stuff down, I really feel like Bradley Beal is still going to get moved. I really do.
Okay. Well,
I'm not sure it's in the middle. Not yeah. It would have to be in January, right?
Yeah, sometime then, or
right at the deadline.
Yeah, right at the deadline, I think.
He's somebody. I just think Washington's going to be so bad. Like, I'm sorry, Sean. I'm sorry. I just think Washington is not good. I was really unimpressed with a lot of what they did, and just I think any team where Porzingis and Bradley Beal are your top two guys, I don't see that leading to anything more than like 40 wins max. That's almost a good season for that roster. So I think there's a universe in which Bradley Beal gets traded. The question is what team does it make sense? What team would want to take on that contract? And the discussion is, do they have players that make sense for the value, but also something that needs to be considered for all these teams is how much contracts are going to go up in 2 or 3 seasons. Yep. So if you have a guy that might need an extension 2 years from now, you could lock in a guy like Beal for a fraction of what that contract might be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like you could get Beal's better contract now or suffer for a year or two and then be in a good spot for a few years. When I was thinking about Beal, I went back to the obvious one, which is, again, your Boston Celtics, Bernie. And that makes sense based on the criteria I just laid out, because you do have the Jaylen Brown extensions coming up. So you could argue that it makes sense, but I wouldn't do it if I'm Boston. So I wouldn't even want to go through with the realistic trade simulator, because I don't think the trade makes sense for Boston to do it. I don't think that makes you better. Do you think that makes Boston better? Let's say it's Jaylen Brown. I don't know how much you'd even have to give up past Jaylen Brown. Let's say it's Jaylen Brown, a first round, and a pick swap. Just to throw it out there, right? I know that wouldn't work. Would you want to do that trade, Bernie?
No, I don't want to be anywhere near Bradley Beal. Not at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I can't disagree with you. That brings me to the next team. A team that missed out in the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes, Bernie.
The Knicks.
No, Miami.
All right, Miami.
What do you think about Miami going after Bradley Beal? Their contract situation is a nightmare. They have so much money, but they have ways to get the deal done. It's as simple as I think you just put Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson together, and I think the money is close.
Yeah. I mean, you could do potentially Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson. I think they would want Tyler Hero, so you have to get rid of him as well.
Sure, I would give him up too. You wouldn't even need Tyler Hero at that point? That's just redundant, to have him in Bradley Beal. So, what do you think about that, Bernie? What does that mean for both of these teams? Do you think there's a universe in which these teams are interested in something like this?
I feel like if you bring those guys, the Wizards are still stuck in the same conundrum that they will be even now, which is so guard heavy or forward heavy that I just don't think that makes sense for this team. I think this team, when you look at the Wizards, they need to cut some of the fat that they have on the team. I feel like they're so loaded at these positions where guys are going to be playing the same spot. Guys like Danny Avdija, guys like Johnny Davis, Corey Kispert, Bradley Beal, who you just re-signed, Kyle Kuzma, Will Barton, who's going to be on the team as well. And Bradley Beal, I think I already said, like, you have so many of those guys. Rui Hachimura, same position, power forward to small forward type of build. I feel like they need to do a better job of getting some of those guys out of there, and bringing in. Either they need to get rid of Bradley Beal and just kind of commit to this youth project that they have going on here, or they need to get rid of some of the guys that they have in here to make a team that's even viable. And if I'm them, I'm not looking for another guard or forward. I'm looking for, maybe some centers or maybe even some draft picks so I can get my team better. I think the Wizards.
Sure, but then you go ahead. You go ahead.
The only thing is, I think the Wizards are in this conundrum of they have so many players that play the same positions that it's hard to know who they're trying to build around or who they want their person to be.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm getting at with this trade in general. Like, they're not going to trade Bradley Beal if things are going okay. They're not going to do that. I don't see a world in which it is going okay. And I'm sorry for you Wizards fans out there. When I look at the Wizards roster, I see a lot of bleak stuff. It doesn't scream a team that's going to get a lot better with time. Do you know what I'm saying? They don't have necessarily anybody in the youth movement aspect of their squad that has even really shown enough promise to justify focusing on. I'm not trying to throw shots at guys like Rui Hachimura and Kispert. Like, those dudes are fine. It's just they're not stars. They've shown no potential to be stars in the league. So when it comes down to it, the reason why I would propose something like this is more of the blow it up type situation where Washington looks at what they have and they say, gosh, man, none of this really amounts to anything long term. So why are we going to pay this guy $43, almost $50 million in a few years when we could go get assets and just follow the lead of some of these other places where, like Utah's doing, you take one asset, turn it into 5, and then you take 2 of those 5 and turn those into 5 more, right? It screams a team that has the potential to do something like that because they have a lot of stuff on the team that's worth something. It's just not worth a lot.
Yeah.
So if you could say go get a package of like, let's say it's basically the Donovan Mitchell trade package, right? Let's say Miami was going to do 3 picks, Tyler Hero, Kyle Lowry, and what's his name, Duncan Robinson, right? You could go turn Tyler Hero into a few more first round picks, maybe not a few, but a couple. And then you could probably go turn Kyle Lowry into a first round pick too if you really wanted to get frisky with it. So it's one of those things where I think this is a situation that's going to look worse and worse by the day. I'm sorry again, Wizards fans. I just don't really see a universe in which Bradley Beal is on this team like 2 years from now. I don't envision it happening.
I don't see him on the team past a year, to be honest with you. Because again, I think for them, they need to start looking at the, and we'll talk about it when we do our preseason predictions and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and get really more in depth on these teams. But I think just kind of synopsis overview of the Wizards right now, they have a lot of young players that are in the same timeline that they need to figure out who they're going to move with and which guys they're going to try to move on from, so they can start figuring out, okay, especially because guys like Rui Hachimura, this is a prove it year for him.
Yeah.
Had a lot of injuries, had some mental health stuff that he needed to take care of. I'm happy that he's taking care of that now. But this is a prove it year for him. He's going to need to figure out how he's going to play well. He hasn't played the same since he left Gonzaga. And he needs to find a way to play like Rui Hachimura from Gonzaga, because that's what teams are looking for. That's why they drafted him. And so they need to start looking at guys like him, guys like Corey Kispert, guys like Johnny Davis, guys like who else do they have that's kind of in the young mold right now?
Yeah, did you say Johnny Davis?
Johnny
I think you
Davis,
did actually.
Aveja, Hachimura,
Yeah.
Kuzma. Like, they need to start looking at these guys and figuring out, okay, is this someone I'm building around, or is this someone I'm moving on from? Because I think that's where the Wizards right now have to look at their team and their roster and figure out, okay, these players are what's going to get us to that next level. This player is not going to get us to where we need to go. And so they need to figure it out from here on out.
Yeah, and I guess the last question I would have before we move on to our last player is, realistically, how many teams do you think are even interested in Beal on that contract? I think there's certainly some, which is why he's still a valuable asset. He's still a great player. He was the NBA's leading scorer 2 seasons ago. So there's definitely people interested who would be interested theoretically. It's more, I think, when you really stop and look at what these teams would even have to put on the table for a guy like Beal, the teams that have the most don't want a guy like Beal because he doesn't change your scenario. So it's going to be one of these teams that's always star hunting. Those are the options when you are realistic about it. So Miami is one of the teams I was thinking of. I considered even somewhere like Denver, maybe, with Jamal Murray's injury history, not really playing very much recently. I think that might be something to consider too. But yeah, I would put them in like code red, blow it up potential within the next calendar year. I would definitely keep an eye on Washington.
Okay.
Let's move on, Bernie. Last player.
Yeah, last one.
This is the one, the big one for me. This is the one I legitimately think this is going to happen. Okay. Maybe not to the team that I'm going to propose that he goes to, but I think he's going to go. And this is a player Bernie and I have been contentious about in recent history of whether or not he's actually going to get traded. And that's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA himself from the Oklahoma City Thunder. I truly do not think SGA will be an Oklahoma City Thunder player at the end of this season.
Okay.
I just don't see it. He's 24. He's certainly on the cusp of like an all-star bid if he was on a winning team. He's very, very good. He had 2 of the most memorable game-winning shots, except one of them wasn't a game-winning shot, last season, back-to-back games. This is a dude. If I had to make a list of players that nobody talks about that is just better than most of the dudes you hear about, he would be almost at the top of my list. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA when he's healthy. And I think, the last thing I'll say before I let you go on this, Bernie, and hear your opinion on whether you think he'd be traded. When you're this good, you don't want to tank every year, I'll drop my famous little word. Bernie loves to use it, the timeline. Like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's timeline is outpacing the Oklahoma City Thunder's timeline. It's just not on the same schedule anymore. Last season, It was. And I would argue if Chet Holmgren was still healthy, you could argue in the direction that let's see how it goes. It could be on the timeline with these
Hmm.
guys. But he basically had to sit on the bench a bunch last season with an injury he probably could have played through. And something similar happened the season before with him on this team in terms of this guy wins you games and they want to be terrible. And I don't think he wants to be on a team that doesn't win 30 games again. Bernie, the floor is yours.
I don't think he's getting traded. I know you made your arguments, you made your points, but I think that he fits the timeline for what they're looking for. Again, he's only what, 22, 23, I think.
He's going to be 24 soon.
Yeah, he's gonna be 24. So he fits the timeline of guys like Giddy, guys like Holmgren, even though he's gonna be hurt for this year. He's still fitting the timeline of where they're at realistically of, again, the guy that is the older veteran player once these other guys have kind of grown up and matured a little bit more as players. He's going to be there for them. And I just think that, with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander being the head of the team, I don't realistically see a team that could potentially try to go in for just Shea Gilgeous-Alexander unless they come in with a package that is so ridiculous and something that they can guarantee one of these young players that, in the future could be traded for, whether that's a current superstar or whether that's a player in the draft, like a Victor Wembanyama or, whoever is like the can't miss prospect that year. That's the only that's the only chance I see the Thunder even realistically trying to get rid of Shea Gilgeous. I just think that they gave him the extension. They love what he is for the community of the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that's why I don't think you can necessarily trade him away from this team when I think that he is one of those guys that the team respects as kind of like going to be the leader relatively soon because he's going to enter that age in those prime years of being the guy. So
sure. And he's done everything that's been asked of him to an extent that I don't think many people have given him enough credit for. Like I think if you're as good as he is, and you're in the NBA and you have this competitive desire to win, I think it's a lot to even be asked for one season to just say, hey, like, we don't want you to play as much as you can play because you're too good, right? That's a tough ask for anybody. So I think one thing that like you're saying is the team might be not willing to shop him, right? But the question is, like, how long is he going to be happy in that scenario, Bernie? And I would say, like, somebody like DeJounte Murray, I think, is a great comparison. Because for everything public facing that we saw with the DeJounte Murray era, I just combined Murray and era into Murrah. The DeJounte Murray trade era in San Antonio. And I've given this conspiracy theory on this channel before. Like, I honestly think it was a mutual, hey, DeJounte Murray just doesn't want to be on a bad team anymore. He's done everything you guys have asked for him. He's a great player, borderline all-star. He wants a trade, but he doesn't want to make it public and throw you guys under the bus, So just make a move, go get value for him, and everybody's happy, right? Mm-hmm. I honestly see a very similar scenario in place. Like, this team is bad, Bernie. They're going to be bad this year. If they had Chet, the question mark is enough that you would say maybe they're not terrible. But they're not good without Chet. They're not good. Right. As good as Giddey is, as much as I like Giddey and Shea, this team isn't in the West, they're not a play-in team. So I think there's a lot of question marks in terms of, is he going to be happy? Whether or not it's one of those things where he's going to go out there and raise a fuss. I think he's entirely gettable, though. I think he's entirely gettable. Like, in terms of the value you'd have to give in return, right? Because let's use DeJounte Murray's trade as a very similar comparison. Just a year or two older than him, has more accolades, been doing it at a higher level for a little bit longer than Shea Gilgeous-Alexander has. Mm-hmm. And he was worth 3 first-round picks, right? Yeah. Essentially, with a little bit around it. Yeah. I think there's 15 teams in the league that would give that much for Shea. But you then have to take into consideration what certain teams were considering giving for a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who only averages a few more points than Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and is significantly worse as a defender than Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And you'd have to say, let's get to the New York Knicks. I see you already have it pulled up.
Yep, it's on
A
there.
team like the Knicks, which the reason I keep I'm sure I've annoyed the hell out of you with this Shea Gilgeous-Alexander trade discussion, but this is the guy. Like this is a guy that every team should be looking at in terms of you're willing to consider giving up 7 first-round picks for a guy who lost in the first round of the playoffs with other all NBA players on his team in Donovan Mitchell, right? Here's a guy who's never been given a fair shake with a team that's above bottom 7 in the league and still consistently is solid, better defender, doesn't complain, doesn't ask for much, just does his thing, and he can do anything in terms of shooting on the court. There's no universe in which a team wouldn't, I think a smart team wouldn't say, hey, we need another guard. Here's a guy who's like 6'5", 6'6". We can give up 4 firsts and like a contract to get him, right? OKC already has so many draft assets. I just don't see them trading SGA. I mean, I get it, but here's my dilemma with OKC, and this is literally the reason. I think in certain scenarios, I would agree with both of you. You've done this much for this long, and if you didn't have the hiccup that is Chet Holmgren's injury, why would you consider trading Shea? Yeah. And the answer is you wouldn't consider trading him. The difference is that this guy that they just spent their second-round pick on has a Liz Frank injury in his foot, which has been career-ending for certain centers of similar size to Chet Holmgren. There's forward centers, right? And he's a full year out. He's a full year out. Players like Shea don't want to be on the worst team in the league. We don't live in the era of people just being okay for hometown teams just because everybody likes each other. That's not the era we're in anymore. It's just not. So I don't know, man. I hate to keep going off on this guy. I think there's a lot of teams that should be picking up the phone and should be trying to make the deal if it's there. And it's less about getting assets in return for the long term. Mm-hmm. But I would say, what else does OKC do? What do they do besides that?
They continue to stick to their timeline, Pete. And that timeline is try to be as bad as you can so you can get the players that you want. Because here's the thing that we know about the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are literally going to be in the draft lottery for the next, what seems like 5 to 6 years with how many draft picks they've acquired. Since Sam Presti came in and was like, I'm going to NBA 2K the heck out of this and get this pick, that pick, and every pick in between. And that is kind of where I'm at with this whole situation. Again, I think Shea Gilgeous could or couldn't fit the timeline depending on how you want to look at things. But I think at the end of the day, when I look at what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish, I think he's going to be the head of the team. Like, again, Josh Giddey is listed as a shooting guard here. I think it's the flip opposite. I think Giddey's the point guard and Shea Gilgeous is the shooting guard in this team. And you look at a guy like, Poku, who a lot of people have been high on. Excuse me.
Oh, he's terrible.
I mean, not terrible, but he's a guy that, he's a favorite of some people. Chet Holmgren, I think, is going to be an excellent ball defender. I think that he, has the ability to do something special. Unfortunately, he just got hurt and, can't contribute this year. I love the pick that they got of Jaden Williams. I think that he's going to be a great addition to that roster. And I think they're going to try to go at it with this team. Again, do I think that this team is going to be necessarily a playoff team in the next couple of years? Probably not, because I still think they're missing that kind of small forward scorer, even though they signed Lou Dort to an extension as well. And I think that as soon as they find that in whatever players coming up in the coming drafts, I think they're going to be just fine, Pete. And I just think that because they're going to be just fine, that leads me to believe that they're not looking to trade away Shea Gilgeous. As much as you would love him on the Knicks, as much as you would love him to be on a different team, I think that the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to be good enough to where he's going to want to stay on that team and try to contend with whatever they have on that roster.
I mean, and honestly, I hope you're right. Like, I hope you're right in the sense that I think that we need more players like that, or just happy being on the squad they're on, want to make a difference and turn the team around for the long term, right? But I do think I think you guys are sticking on the OKC side of things more than him, right? As a person, right? And I agree with you.
Yeah.
In terms of OKC, I don't think they should trade him. Even though I think he's a point guard and I think Josh Giddey is a point guard in a
Yeah.
perfect scenario. I still like them together, but I think they're both point guards. Um, the question is how long can you justify this guy's career just being on this team? Like that's where it comes down to for me. Like the selfish part of me is like, God, I would love to see him on the Knicks. He's the perfect fit for everything the Knicks need. But
Hmm.
beyond even just that, he's too good to be on a bottom five team every year of his career. And if you look back at his career, he's been on almost bottom five teams almost every season of his career. And it's not really his fault. He was a trade piece in the Paul George trade from the Clippers before they started to turn it around. He was on that last season where they made the playoffs with Lou Williams and him and Montrez, right? But besides that, it's been nothing but just bleak gray skies for this dude. And I question whether or not he's going to be okay with it. I agree with you too. I really think OKC is not going to want to move him if it's up to them exclusively. Why would they? He is only 24, right? The difference is he's not going to just give up the rest of his career for that. I don't think he is. So I don't know. This is one of the most interesting ones. That's why I saved it for last. I think it's a good debate, a good discussion,
Yeah.
and I think it really depends on your philosophy as a team. Like I don't even think that OKC necessarily needs to just say, "Hey, we're getting assets in return, long-term assets." They could go
Hmm.
get something better than assets. They could go get something that fits their team more. And he fits their team pretty well, but what is their team right now anyway? So they're in the most gray area of all teams by their own making. Of
Yeah.
we're the asset squad, but we
Yeah.
do want to get better. But now we're still not good enough to get better. So we're kind of still by default the
Hmm.
asset team.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's going to be the interesting situation for them as they continue to develop and continue to have those draft picks that they have. We'll see, what team, what what players they like a little bit better than Shea Gilgeous. If they do, I think that they should keep him and kind of hold ship with him. But let us know in the comment section down below, people. What do you guys make of this trade situation for the Oklahoma City Thunder? Should they look to move on from Shea Gilgeous, or should they try to hold on to him and try to build around this roster? We would love to know your comments and opinions in the comment section down below. And please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, all that stuff leads to more interaction and helps us lead us to better conversations that you guys are more involved in, like Sean and Tar Heel Nation were today. So again, let us know in the comment section down below. All right, Pete. I think that's gonna do it here for today. We
Yes,
kind of
sir.
went long, but I appreciate the conversation. I think it was, we had some great topics to talk about. Clearly, starting from, of course, the whole Phoenix Suns organization and what they just did. The Kraken CEO coming out and talking about the Supersonics, NBA in-season franchise or in-season tournament. That was a fun one to talk about, and of course, the segment of the day sponsored by Pete was, of course, the trade deadline, trade machine. It was a great conversation to have. So again, appreciate you coming on to talk about this stuff. And let us know in the comment section down below, people, what do you guys make of the topics that we talked about? Let's see here. I think that's going to do it here, Pete, unless you got anything else for us.
No, I think that's it. That's it for me. Just everybody stay tuned. I think sometime in the next week or two, we're gonna do our season predictions.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a longer stream than usual, I would imagine.
Yes.
Just going through every team. It's gonna be a long one. Be fun. Should be a lot of debate, discussion, probably some takes that people are not gonna appreciate or
Mm-hmm.
agree with. But that's what it's all about. We're here to have some discussions and just enjoy basketball. So yeah, stay tuned, guys. Stay with us. I know this right now, this week and next week are the deadest of dead weeks for the NBA. It's the
Yep.
beginning of the NFL season, calm before the storm for the NBA season. So just remember to keep checking back with us, like and subscribe, and stay with us. Appreciate you all.
Exactly. So, with that being said, please remember to hit, like Pete said, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, all this stuff leads to bigger conversations that more people can reach out to us and really talk about and really communicate with us and the fans as you guys are what you guys felt like about these segments. You know, add your opinions and conversations into the topic. We love to add that stuff. And again, we do have some more exciting stuff coming near the pipeline. As soon as we have that stuff and plans finalized, you will definitely be getting notifications from us about the future of the Charge channel and what it looks like. Geno Smith MVP signing out. All right, Sean. We appreciate that. Appreciate the Geno Smith talk.
I gotta ask one Geno Smith question to you and everybody else in this chat right now. Did you guys see the clip of him cupping the dude's butt last night?
No, I did not see that.
I'm just telling you, go look for it. Geno Smith for MVP, baby.
Geno Smith for MVP. But with that being said, thank you once again for joining us here on the Charge. You know, the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. Like I said, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And we'll catch everybody on the next episode and live stream, which is going to be happening this Saturday with my boy Pete. We're going to be doing a live stream then. Anyway, guys, catch you on Saturday on the live stream. Check out the videos for the rest of the week, and we'll see you guys on Saturday. Peace out, everybody.